Good morning. Last Sunday was the final week in our short series looking at some of the parables Jesus told. Over the last few weeks, we've looked at the parables of the wise and foolish builders, the prodigal son, the persistent widow, the good Samaritan, and last week we heard about the 10 miners. The strapline for our series was more than a story, because while, as we've discovered, most of the parables are great stories in themselves, they are more than a story, because Jesus told each of them to teach us something important about ourselves and about God and his kingdom. Now, my guess would be that if I was to ask you what happened in each of these parables, you would fairly easily be able to tell me the main events of each story. Likewise, if I were to ask you what were the key events in the life of Moses who we looked at in September, I'd again expect you'd be able to tell me at least some of these. But if I was to ask you what were the key points in the book of Colossians which we looked at in November, my guess is that most of you would find that much harder to tell me what was in each chapter, because it was more theology than story. As one Native American proverb goes, "Tell me a fact and I'll learn. Tell me a truth and I'll believe. But tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever." As we've seen in our brief exploration of just some of Jesus' parables, Jesus was a master storyteller. He told stories using the language and settings of his day, which his listeners would have been familiar with and would have related to easily. He used illustrations from everyday activities such as sewing, building, shepherding, about people, labourers, rich men, Pharisees, widows, about nature, the vine, branches, a fig tree, and about common everyday objects such as coins, wine bottles and candles. But Jesus didn't just tell stories for the sake of it. He told stories to provoke a response in people's hearts. And it's likely that Jesus did much of his teaching through telling stories, because most people then and now can naturally relate to stories and remember them in a way which they struggle to do with more abstract truths or facts. Everyone enjoys a good story. But what is it about stories which makes them so appealing? Well, stories draw us in. They hold our attention. We want to find out what happens next in a good story. Stories engage and stir our emotions. We can picture the scene and often identify with the characters in them, their flaws and their strengths. And we can reflect on how we might have responded if we were in that situation in the story, for example. And stories provide us with context, and knowing the context of something helps us to understand its relevance and its significance. Stories also help us to remember. Because of the fact that stories engage us and draw us in and engage our emotions, we find it easier to remember them and then to go on to share them with others. Take the following examples of well-known stories, for example. If I say to you, "Slow and steady wins the race," what story goes with that? Or if I say, if a princess kisses a frog, what happens? He turns into a prince, doesn't he? Or if a pig wants to build a house, what material should it use? Bricks, of course. And we know these things because stories stick with us. Stories stick with you. And modern scientific research has even demonstrated that the human brain is hardwired to respond to stories because our brains experience stories as if they were part of real life and were happening to us, not just the characters in the story. So we too can use stories to connect with others. A number of years ago now, we did a sermon series on evangelism, and we looked at the importance of stories in sharing the gospel, because most people connect with stories much more easily than with abstract theology. We thought about the importance of our story, about God's story, and about their story, the story of the person we're speaking to. Most non-Christians we encounter will be far more impacted by hearing our God story, the difference that knowing Jesus makes to us personally and how we live our lives, than by hearing us simply recount the truth we know about God. This is why we keep encouraging you to think about what your God story is and how you might be able to share it with others. So if someone asks you, you're not just put on the spot, but you've got something ready to share. Now, a great starting point for doing this is to reflect on the two questions we asked when we did the Do You Know Him initiative. We asked, how did you come to know Jesus? And crucially, what difference does knowing Jesus make in your life now? And when we tell our story, we can weave God's story into it in a way which helps people connect their story to both our story and God's story. And it's not just non-Christians who can benefit from hearing our God story, because hearing someone else's God story is a source of tremendous encouragement for us too, especially perhaps when we hear about the difference knowing Jesus makes in our lives now, how it influences what we do and reminds us of who God is and how he is still active working in our lives today, in the mundane things of life just as much as in the miraculous. And when we share such stories with one another, it can help to remind us of God's love and faithfulness and inspire us all to keep trusting God and to live out the gospel more fully in our own lives. And the encouraging thing is, we don't need to be stunningly eloquent in our storytelling for them to be effective in speaking to and encouraging others. We just need to share them, and we trust that God and his power in us will do the rest. As Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 2, and I'm going to read this from the Message translation because I like how it puts it. He writes, "You'll remember, friends, that when I first came to you to let you in on God's sheer genius, I didn't try to impress you with polished speeches and the latest philosophy. I deliberately kept it plain and simple. First Jesus and who he is, then Jesus and what he did, Jesus crucified. I was unsure of how to go about this and felt totally inadequate. I was scared to death, if you want the truth of it. And so nothing I said could have impressed you or anyone else. But the message came through anyway. God's Spirit and God's power did it, which made it clear that your life of faith is a response to God's power, not to some fancy or emotional footwork by me or anyone else. God in us will give us the words. His power will come through with the way we tell it, with his Spirit's living in us. I'd like to close with a story I came across, which I rather like, about the power of stories. An old Jewish rabbi, known and respected for his learning and wit, was once asked by his students why he often illustrated truth by telling a story. With a wry smile, he replied, "I can best explain that through a story, a parable about parable itself. Truth, naked and cold, had been turned away from every door in her village. Her nakedness frightened people, and when Parable found her, she was huddled in a corner, shivering and hungry. Parable asked, 'Truth, why do you seem so sad?' 'Because I'm so old and unattractive. I seem to cause fear in people, and so they avoid me,' said Truth. 'Nonsense,' laughed Parable. 'That's not why they avoid you. Here, borrow some of my clothes and see what happens.' So Parable took Truth home, dressed her in story, and sent her out again. Clothed in story, Truth knocked again at the doors and was readily welcomed into the villagers' houses. They invited her to eat at their tables and warm herself by their fires. The old rabbi smiled and said, 'For the truth is that people cannot face truth naked. They much prefer her clothed.' Telling a story can connect with people emotionally in ways that a direct approach can't. And people remember stories. In our in-person services today, we're going to be giving people the opportunity to share their stories. And I'd like to encourage you, if you haven't already done so, to think about what your God story is and how you might go about sharing it with others in a way that can connect with them. Amen. So in keeping with the theme of stories and sharing what's going on, how God's working in our lives and the life of our church, we're now going to have some updates on ministries that are happening, particularly those that are happening in the house. We're going to hear from Emma, our food bank manager, about how the food bank's working out of the house. We're going to hear from Ruth, our CAP centre manager. We're going to hear from Sarah, an update on Renew. It's been going on for over a year now, how it's working. And I'm going to share a little bit about Kintsugi Hope, so you're aware of what's involved in that. And finally, we're going to hear a little bit from a couple of people involved in a prayer quad about the benefits of that, because I'd really like to encourage you all to consider whether you could ask 2 or 3 people to meet with you regularly and pray with you, to support and encourage one another and share stories together. So I hope you enjoy hearing some of these updates.
Hello, my name's Emma Jennings. I'm a manager at Skipton Food Bank, which is run by our church. And I just wanted to take the opportunity this morning to thank the church, really, for the gift of the house. The house to the food bank team, me and Mel and our volunteers, is really not just a place to come and have coffee after church, but it is a real gift to us as a team, and a gift that we can offer our food bank users. We every session, Tuesday and Friday mornings, we usually pray before we start a session, and someone in the team will always just about thank God for this space that we have. About 6 months ago, we started using it as a place to distribute our food parcels from, and before then we didn't have anywhere to welcome people into and talk to them, whereas now we have this space where we can welcome people, offer them hospitality, sit them down, talk to them about what food they need, listen to them, and offer them other places that might be able to help them. And we really feel it is making a really big difference to those needing to use the food bank. We've connected people with Ruth from CAP. We've connected people with organisations that can help help with fuel bills, gas and electric bills. We've sometimes prayed with people. We've sat with people as they've cried. We've had people come into our space extremely anxious. We had a lady a few months ago that Mel had invited in. We realised she was extremely anxious. We were looking out for her. She came in all wrapped up in a scarf. Didn't want to show anyone her face, but we invited her in and she sat down in the snug, which is a little bit more private, and chatted to Mel. And at the end of the conversation, when she was taking her food away, she said, "Oh, this place is such a safe and welcoming space." So for people who've given money to make the house a viable place, for people that have prayed for the house to be a welcoming, safe place for people. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you. I feel there is more to come, more that will be done here. But I just wanted to thank you and to say that those prayers are being answered, that we are welcoming people who are struggling in our community into this space, and they really are appreciating it. So, thanks.
Hello, I'm Ruth Howard-Burt, and as you know, I head up the CAP Debt Help here at Skipton Baptist Church, and we've just been asked to give a little bit of an update of things that are happening in our areas of work for you all. And so I just wanted to update you on the debt help and how things are going at the beginning of January 2024. I really enjoy my first appointments. A first appointment with CAP is where somebody's phoned in on the helpline and they don't know anything about us often and haven't met me before. And then we get this first appointment where we go either to their home, or currently quite a few people are coming into the house to meet me in the snug. And there's a certain sense of anticipation, both on behalf of the person seeking help and also for me, wondering what kind of person this will be and what kind of offer of help we can bring on that particular day. So recently I've met some just really lovely people who are seeking help. And, it's great to make that connection on the first visit. I think those who are coming into the house are enjoying just coming in and being offered a coffee by people from the Renew team, and then coming through with me to the snug, which they all agree is a lovely room, a quiet room to sit in and have some time for me to listen to their situation and for CAP to start to get involved in their situation and circumstance. So at the moment, I would say probably half of my first appointments are happening in the house where I'm meeting people who are travelling in. And then the others are home visits, primarily in Barnoldswick area. And then we've also set up another connection point, if you like, in Settle at a place called The Place in Settle, where they're happy for me to come in and meet with clients who are in the Settle area, and again have a meeting point where they offer a cup of coffee and other multiple services who can help those who are in the Settle area. So this seems to be more of the model that we're working on at the moment, which is working well. Another interesting part of our work at the moment is just working alongside the CAP Money course and the team of volunteers who are running that. I've enjoyed accompanying some clients who have come to me for debt help and who just really wanted further help with their budgeting. So bringing them along to attend the Wednesday morning money course and just sitting with them and talking through the budget. That's been a real joy in the last little while. Also, Steve has restarted the CAP Job Club. And so again, just having these different branches maybe of the work that we do, where we can signpost people to different offers of help, which is just great sort of joined up thinking that we're just embarking on in 2024 and is making a difference to the work that's coming out of our church here at Skipton Baptist through the Renew space and then the food bank and the signposting that's going on there, the CAP Job Club and the money course. And just with those things in mind, I'd like to invite you to join us in the house on Thursday, the 22nd of February, from 7 p.m. I think it would just be about an hour. If you'd like to come and hear a brief kind of stories about the work that we're doing, both with CAP, the food bank, and Renew, and mainly the focus of the evening will be to pray around these different areas of our work and just to ask God for wisdom, for direction, for the inspiration of His Spirit as we move forward in our different areas of work that are happening connected to our new building and the new project of the house. So yeah, please come along or email me and ask me about that. And, just feel that you can be involved in this work, which is part of your church here in Skipton. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm here to give you a bit of an update and some insight, I suppose, into what we've been up to at Renew. So for those of you who might not know, Renew is our wellbeing cafe space run on a Tuesday and Friday in the house. We just love it. There's no fancy way to say what a joy it is to provide a space for people to come and be together. We've been open for just over a year, and one of the most amazing things is watching the relationships develop between the people that come along regularly. We have people who started coming right at the beginning, who didn't know anyone and are now a central part of our kind of regulars. They're people that welcome others in, just as they were welcomed at the beginning. And it's beautiful to see that grow and develop. The thing that I really think that God has been speaking to me particularly about with this space is that it's not something that we do to people or an event that we put on for people. It's a space that is created for everyone. So for those people that are on the host team, the space is for them, for all of us, just as much as it is for anyone that might come through the doors as a guest. we talked about sharing specific stories, and there's just too many. And it's hard to highlight a specific one. So instead, I asked some of the team what it is that they love about being part of Renew. So here's some thoughts from just a few of the team about what it is that makes Renew such a special thing to be involved with.
Oh, I love coming down here on a Tuesday morning and meeting people and chatting to people, and usually making the coffee and tea. It's a really good space, and we get lots of nice people to chat to, and some of my lunch club ladies come as well. So we get all sorts of people, and it's so nice to get alongside people and chat to them.
I enjoy coming and getting alongside people, meeting them and hearing their stories. It's been really good to build relationships and to be a place where people can just come and be themselves and not feel pressured to put on an act or anything like that. It's just as much for us as the team as it is for those who come along. I know there's several mornings where I've come and I've just needed a place where I could just be myself without having to put on a face. It's been really, really helpful for me as well.
I really like being boots on the ground for what I feel God wants us to do in terms of embodying His values in our community. I really like facilitating community for people who are already linked to the church, also people who aren't otherwise linked to the church. I really appreciate the intergenerational relationships that have been facilitated. I bring my 3-year-old along, and he's friends with people of all generations, even like an 85-year-old, and they have a genuine relationship with each other because we come in week in, week out. And I feel that that's a really precious thing that is present nowadays.
Renew helps me out. It's the main thing is chatting to people, get to know people. You know, everybody has problems and all that, but we share them in ourselves. It's just the love of people and the love of a dog, which are more welcome here. And it's quite for people, you know, bring a dog, and everybody is welcome here. Have tea and coffee, have a cake, a natter. If you don't want a natter, you know, it's up to you, but you're welcome.
Hi, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Kintsugi Hope. Kintsugi Hope is a Christian charity based in the UK, set up by a couple called Patrick and Diane Reagan. We as a church have been partners with Kintsugi for several years now. Its aim is to make a difference to people's mental and emotional health and well-being. Kintsugi wants to see a world where mental and emotional health is understood and accepted, and to create safe and supportive communities in which everyone can grow and flourish. I'm going to show you a short video which tells you a little bit more about Kintsugi that was put together by a church in Bristol.
You know, life is about connection with other people, and the only way we can really connect with people is to be honest.
Kintsugi Hope has helped me realise that it's okay not to be okay.
The power in this is when people start to think, oh, I'm not on my own, I'm not alone. There's other people that feel like I do.
Kintsugi is a Japanese art form for repairing broken crockery.
They actually make a feature of the breaks and infill them with gold.
The whole thing is made more beautiful and more meaningful because of its brokenness.
Being honest isn't weak, it gives its strength, its courage.
It really helped me just as a starting point to sort of discover a lot of these issues at a deeper level.
It's about getting to know yourself really, rather than living by other people's values.
Kintsugi Hope allowed me to be welcomed into a group of people where I could be honest with myself in front of them and where there was no judgment.
It sheds light on the way you're feeling. It sheds light on why you are the way you are. And once you receive some of that light, you see more light at the end of the tunnel. It's a journey to healing.
Here at SBC, we've now run 5 Kintsugi courses. We did 2 online ones during lockdown back in 2021 and have since done 3 in-person ones. The full course is 12 weeks long, but more recently we've done a couple of shorter 6-week courses to make them more accessible for people who can't commit to a full 12 weeks. In the 6-week course, we cover 4 core topics. We look at honesty, anxiety, depression and perfectionism. And we then choose 2 more topics from anger, disappointment and loss, shame, self-acceptance, healthy relationships and resilience. Each week, we have a variety of short videos, little bits of input from the leaders, and lots of small group discussion time. We've had a mix of church people and non-church people on all the courses we've done so far. Everyone is welcome. And you don't need to be struggling with your mental or emotional health and well-being to benefit from participating in the course and exploring the topics together. We all have things that we struggle with. We can all benefit from exploring these topics together. Kintsugi Hope's motto is to discover treasure in life's scars. But in order to discover that treasure, we first need to recognise and face some of those scars rather than seek to hide them, which is why the topic for each one is always honesty. Each course we've run so far has been wonderfully different because one of the most valuable things is learning from one another's reflections and life experiences, because we're all different and we're all unique as we look at the different topics together. Everyone who did the last course said they'd really recommend attending a Kintsugi Hope group to someone else. So we're planning to hold another taster session at some point in March, with a view to running another course after Easter if there's sufficient interest. So please come and speak to me if you'd like to find out more. Thanks.
The January Deacons meeting was the day after Phil had preached on the wise and foolish builders. And we were asked in our devotional what we thought was a good way to increase our foundation in Jesus. And when it came to my turn, I shared that I thought a really good way is to be part of a prayer quad or prayer triplet. I'm in a group of 4 guys who meet once every 3 to 4 weeks, and we pray and we share together, and we find it so encouraging, so uplifting, that it really is a huge benefit to our growth together and as individually in our relationship with God. I think one of my fellow quad members, Andy Sellers, is far better at explaining why this is so good. So I'll hand over to Andy and he will tell you what is so brilliant about being a member of a prayer quad. Thank you.
One thing that's important to me as a disciple of Jesus is to be part of a prayer quad. There's a verse in Proverbs 27 that says, as iron sharpens iron, a friend sharpens a friend. And the prayer quad that I'm part of has grown to be 4 friends who want to be faithful followers of Jesus, whether it be in our workplaces, families, the communities where we live, in the church that we're a part of. We want to follow Jesus. And in that prayer quad we can share stuff together that's brought us joy, stuff that's a challenge to us, but we can honestly, openly, growing to be vulnerable with each other, share stuff that we can pray together for, and we can support each other, and we can walk together seeking to be faithful followers of Jesus. We've still more to learn, and it's always that sense of, where is God going to take us as a prayer quad next? Because we do want to follow him.